Check, check, mic check. Check, check, mic check. Welcome to Podcast Envy, episode 53. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klender, and sometimes I feel like I get so consumed with figuring out how to run my podcasting business or how to help my podcast clients use their show to help support their business, their brand, their organization, their income. Are you somebody who has been podcasting for a little while and you are so obsessed with those download numbers, you cannot think about anything else except how to get more listeners? Or are you trying to figure out how to monetize your show or get your listeners to subscribe to your Patreon or support your business or buy your product or service? Or are you somebody who has not yet launched your show and you are wondering about all of these things before your show even exists? Maybe you're wondering, is it really worth the investment of time and money and energy to have a podcast? We put so much effort, blood, sweat, and tears, time and energy, and in some cases money, into producing these shows. And sometimes I feel like saying, hey, podcasting, what have you done for me lately? Have you ever felt that way? Well, I've got some fresh inspiration and answers for you. Today, I have a very fun episode that is going to bring us back to the heart of podcasting, the spirit of indie podcasting, and remind us how this medium, how this practice of making a show can be super rewarding in very intangible, non-monetary, non-businessy ways. Because honestly, without these intangible benefits, I don't know how many of us would keep making a show. This is definitely the highest number of podcast guests I have ever had on one episode. I have 7 guests on today's show, and those guests are packing in insight, heart, and humor into this short episode. We recorded this at the 2019 Southgate Media Group Podcast Marathon at the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, Illinois. This is my second time participating in the marathon. And we have also had Rob and Martha Southgate on recently with an episode about producing live podcasting events recorded live at the Women in Podcasting Festival. I don't know anyone who produces as many live podcasting events as Rob and Martha do, and they are so supportive of indie podcasters, people who just really love what it is that they're doing. In this episode, we're also joined by Martha and Rob's 12-year-old daughter, Molly, and you will hear how long she's been podcasting. Longer than I have. The Southgate's podcasts are too numerous to list all of them here. But Molly has a show that she has produced called Read Between the Lines. Rob mentions both New Media Lab and The Creative Impulse, which is coming soon to podcast apps everywhere. Collectively, the family creates a bunch of TV fan casts for shows like Orange is the New Black, Doctor Who, American Horror Story, and some others. I mean, just go to Apple Podcasts and type in Southgate Media Group. They are out of control. This episode is also featuring Angela DeMarco and Jamie Black from the Icky Lousy Junkie Life Showdown. Say that title 5 times fast. Ansel Birch and Karolyn Blake from Starlight Radio Dreams, which is a network that includes a show called Celtica, and also from Gateways, a show that is produced by the Otherworld Theater Company in Chicago. Links to all of these shows and peoples will be in the show notes for this episode at thecreativeimposter.com/pod Envy053, linked, of course, in the description of this episode in your app, assuming that your app supports hyperlinks. It's a fun episode. Stick around to the end. I think that you are really going to enjoy what these podcasters have to say about what has podcasting done for you lately.
We're all on. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder, and I have with me today the largest crew of podcast bosses that I have ever had in one room together on the show. The idea for today's episode is what has podcasting done for you, making a podcast, because I think a lot of times we think about using a show to do something, but we don't always think about what we become when we become podcasters. So let's see, if you could, in 60 seconds or less, introduce who you are, what your show is, and how it came to be. Can it be done?
So my name is Angela DeMarco, and I'm a co-host of the Icky Lousy Junkie Life Showdown. Our podcast came to be one day during a drunken brunch. Because I am a life and health coach, we were like, how am I going to get some help getting some clients? Because I need them to know what life choices they make and give them some advice. And so we decided we were going to call it Making Bad Life Choices with Jamie and Angela, but we decided we didn't like it, so we came up with the Icky Lousy Junkie Life Showdown. That's how we came about.
You did that in less than 60, because I didn't say anything.
Well, you have to say something.
Why do I have to say something? We spoke for both of us.
30 seconds.
You have like 20 seconds.
Okay, well, I'm Jamie Black. I'm the other half
Too
of
late.
the Icky Lousy Junkie Life Showdown. And yeah, that's how it came to be, just like she said.
Angela, so you work in the personal development space.
So I'm a master transformational health and life coach.
I remember you saying something about wanting your clients to know what it is you actually do,
Yes.
how to describe that work. But now you're afraid that your clients may listen to your show and...
No, I'm just kidding about that. We always joke in every episode. I'm like, I have a feeling like our listeners probably look at me and go, why should I look at her for health and life coaching, since it seems like she's made every possible bad life choice that's ever been. But, you know, I always say crisis is the invitation, you know, it's not the enemy. And so I would prefer to have a coach who's gone through some crap to help me get through it.
Do you think that podcasting, making your show, has changed you in some way or benefited you in some way personally?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's kind of our motto of the show, too, is that, you know, you have to live, laugh, and grow from your bad life choices, and that you're not alone in anything. And that if you think that you've made this bad life choice, there's probably hundreds of people who've made it along with you and are doing it at that moment.
Do you think talking about these choices and these mistakes, that it has helped you in some way to make different choices in your life?
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes you go back to some bad choices, but you know, you definitely handle them maybe in a different way, or maybe respond to them a little bit differently once you can reflect and look back. So it definitely makes you change a little bit.
Jamie?
Yes, I am the exact same person I was the day we started.
I have tried not to grow at all.
How long ago was that?
Almost 2 years now.
So you have not grown or changed or developed or had any sort of like, you know, you're just like
still
straight,
ignorant.
flatline, still ignorant.
I'm still ignorant.
No, which I think is ridiculous, because I honestly think that Jamie should be a life coach. I think he's even smarter than I am at times when listening to him.
So why do you keep podcasting then, Jamie?
I do it because she needs help. No, I'm kidding. No, I think what happened is, didn't I say, you know, I like to help people too, but she's the professional, I'm the comic relief. And so I was like, we should do a podcast together, and then this way we can reach more people and help people. And that's what we do. I hope. Don't we?
Has the show helped you to be funnier?
No.
No.
It has helped you in no way.
No, I'm telling you, I'm the exact same person.
Why am I
was.
here?
Literally the same person.
It is Podcast Angel time, and this month I am shouting out my podcast audio host, Libsyn, the host that I recommend for all of my podcasting clients and students. It's their 15th birthday. And that is one of the reasons why I recommend them as an audio host. Contrary to popular belief, I am not so super techie, and therefore I do not like taking risks or having mysteries with the technical portion of hosting a podcast. I would much rather pay somebody a small amount, 15 to 20 bucks a month, to take care of all of that stuff for me, to protect my audio files, to make sure everything is running smoothly, to make sure that my show is formatted properly for all of the podcast channels that exist. And also, I'm a huge fan fan of both Elsie Escobar and Rob Walsh over at Libsyn, who are the co-producers and co-hosts of The Feed, Libsyn's official podcast about podcasting. Pro tip, that show is one of the reasons why I know so dang much about podcasting. Anyway, if you are considering launching a new podcast, you can sign up for their very free, very awesome podcasting quick start webinar. And then when you create your Libsyn account, use the promo code ENVY for your first month free. Oh, also, if you are in Chicago, join me at Nextdoor Cafe on Diversity for a free Launch Your Podcast in 2020 workshop Saturday, December 14th. Can't wait for December? Or maybe you're already podcasting and just need some help getting unstuck and knowing where to go next? Visit thecreativeimposter.com/craft and culture. And there you will find my behind the scenes podcast Envy Craft and Culture podcast. That is where you can ask me questions, like as specific as you want to get, and I will do my very best to answer them on that private feed. And for just $29 a month right now through the end of the year, yes, you heard that right, through the end of the year, and then that rate is going up January 1st. So get it before January 1st. You will be in the VIP circle. That's VIP for very important podcaster. And we will have perks, bonuses, and a monthly live call in which I can help you do the thing that you need to do with your show. Once again, that's thecreativeimposter.com/craft and culture. Also, libsyn.com, use the promo code ENVY, and all of your podcasting needs will magically be taken care of.
All right, and now we're going to turn it over to Ansel and Karolyn.
All right, so we are both on two different podcasts together. We do the Starlight Radio Dreams podcast, which is a audio comedy variety show. We perform that live at Mrs. Murphy & Sons Irish Bistro every month, and we turn that live recording into the podcast that we release every week. So it's been a great experience in both doing live theater as well as creating a podcast at the same time. You want to do Gateways?
You should do Gateways.
All right.
You know more.
We both also do a show called Gateways, based out of the Otherworld Theater space on Clark near Irving Park. Otherworld Theater produces genre fiction, specifically science fiction and fantasy, all the time. That is the only thing they do in that space, and they brought me on to produce and curate this show, which is about short stories in the science fiction genre.
And there's something called Celtica?
Yes. Celtica is one of the serials that we produce on Starlight Radio Dreams, in which I act. I'm Celtica. But I also do the music for Celtica. We use a lot of British Isles folk songs, and especially the folk music of Wales, because I have a mad crush on the land of Wales. I came to be in both of these podcasts because 3 or 4 years ago, Ansel cast me on his cast at the Renaissance Fair, and then promptly cast me in everything else he was doing, which I really don't mind. I've never had such an affordable agent.
We're deeply nerdy.
Ansel, you've been in podcasting for about 4 years, you said?
Yeah, I got into podcasting when I started working with a show called Our Fair City. Our Fair City is it's a great show. If you haven't had a chance to give it a listen, it's an incredibly produced, deep, beautiful piece. It's a post-apocalyptic radio epic for the internet. I think I said that right. And I'm the voice of the narrator for that show. And so I recorded that for a few years. I've worked on a couple other podcasts, and then eventually I got to the point with a group of friends around a coffee table drinking, which is, I feel like, going to be a thread in this conversation. And we were like, we want to tell our stories our way. And so we founded Starlight Radio Dreams 4 years ago. And so, yeah, it's been an opportunity to tell the stories that we want to tell however we want to do them. And that's the beauty of podcasting, is that you really do have the freedom to do anything. There's no special effects budget. There's no producers you have to go through. There's no gate to get through. If you have an iPhone, 20 minutes, and an internet connection, you can make a podcast. And if you want to get really complicated about it, you do what I do, where it requires 10 other people, a venue, an audience, and, 12 microphones. So, there's a whole range of it. And I think that's the amazing thing about this space, is that it is so open to any voice that wants to get into it.
What does that mean to you personally, being able to tell the stories you want to tell in the way that you want to tell them?
Well, it's simultaneously an amazing opportunity and an amazing challenge, because when you're going to produce a show every single month for 4 years, you have to be prepared to write a story every single month for 4 years. And I think if I had gone back 4 years ago and reminded myself what that meant, maybe we would have all thought again about doing it. But because we didn't, here we are. And that challenge has pushed so many amazing ideas to the front. It's given us so many opportunities to think through amazing scenarios. We write, everything from science fiction to historical fiction to, we've got one that takes place in a dystopic office building. We've got a story that takes place on a spaceship. We've got the breadth of fiction is available to us through this media, and that's a lot of it because of the flexibility of podcasting.
Karolyn, do you feel like you're the same person that you were, like Jamie, just completely the same from the time that you first started working on a podcast to now?
Absolutely not. For me, it's been a really wonderful nursery for my creativity, because I came out of an acting tradition. I went to school to study acting. That was my main thrust for creative endeavors. And with Starlight Radio Dreams, it's been this wonderful, safe spot where I can try a new thing. I hadn't been trained in, radio acting, but I get to try silly voices and all kinds of different character things. I took a writing course or two, but never really gave a crap about my writing or thought it was worth sharing with a human. But there have been times where, the script is thin, we need some pieces. Karolyn, will you please write something? I'm like, oh, okay, God, please laugh at this. And people have laughed, which is just the most
Turns out you're hilarious.
oh boy, I'm not the only one who found me funny. Thank any God you want. But yeah, so it's been a really great space of trying and seeing something succeed, even if it doesn't, isn't a standing ovation. Karolyn, you're the only funny person now. You matter the most. But just to have any amount of that validation and that well-received-ness that makes you try the next thing with a little less fear, that I think is really cool and wonderful.
Awesome.
Big change in my life.
Molly, you've been podcasting for half your life. Do you even remember a time before podcasting?
Honestly, not really. It's been just straight always podcasting. I am on a podcast called Read Between the Lines. I host a podcast called Read Between the Lines.
Host and produce.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you have done over 500 podcast episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Over 500 podcast episodes. How old were you when you first started making podcasts?
6.5.
Why do you think you keep doing it? What do you love the most about it?
Because, I love acting, and it's just it's a performance. And so it just all feeds in, and anything that's creative, I'm there for it.
Do you think that it has helped you to learn anything, or that it has helped give you opportunities that you may not have had if you were not already a seasoned podcaster?
Definitely. Most of which is Comic-Cons, getting to go there, getting to find Blue Box. I would most likely not have been as geeky as I am and not have noticed that there was a tortoise in the window here if I did not do podcasts.
So it really brought you into a whole culture and a whole community of people as a part of that community, right?
Yes, and now I cannot imagine not being in a part of this community.
Is there anything that's been really challenging or hard about making podcasts for you?
Sometimes the amount, when we would do TV shows, that was always very hard because you had to get every week doing it. But now that I've got my book one, I can just go all over the place and take a year and not do it, which I don't like to do, but that happens when I'm busy.
The producer says that's not true.
But yeah.
It is not recommended to take a 1-year hiatus from your show, but because you can do anything with podcasting, if you need to take a hiatus, there's things school.
Right. Well, I'm homeschooled, so.
Oh, yeah, so no problem.
I've got no excuse.
Is there a podcasting class in your homeschool?
That's just my life.
Yeah, there you go.
And now, Rob and Martha Southgate, who are on an episode of Podcast Envy when they produced the first ever Women in Podcasting Festival in Chicago at Otherworld Theater. Martha, let's start with you because you're holding the mic. You're ready to go.
All right, let's see. 60 seconds or less. So we started podcasting 6 years ago. We did Under the Dome, which was god-awful, and we did all the seasons. Once Upon a Time, Doctor Who, Orange is the New Black, Binge-worthy, Pop Culture Countdown, Live at the Blue Box encompasses like 100 different ones. And I have my own podcasts coming out in the next year. I will have 2 that are just me that I'm not going to talk about any further than that. But
All right.
Okay, I'm on all sorts of stuff.
What's your favorite show right now
My big
that you're
thing right
making?
now that I'm actually actively working on is New Media Lab, where I talk about podcasting, like the business of new media. And the one I'm debuting today, I'm super excited about. It's called The Creative Impulse. And it's all about creativity and being creatively gifted. I'm just way into this. And then I'm also on Disturbed with Chris Mao from the Blue Box, where we talk about American Horror Story and horror stuff. And I'm just on all sorts of stuff. If I went through the list, it's a lot.
And then, Martha, do you remember a time before podcasting?
oh yes,
Okay.
those were good old days. No, yeah. When we started podcasting, he dragged me, kicking and screaming. And I was like, fine, if you want to do this and it means you'll stop talking to me about superheroes, I will get you all the people in all the world that'll talk to you about superheroes, and then I never have to hear about this again. So I did things with him based on building this network to get me out of that, pretty much. But what I didn't expect was when I first started, I said no video ever, no live ever. I don't want anyone to talk to me, write to me, review me. I pretty much just want to be invisible and just do this with you to let you do this. And here, okay, doing all the different things. So I didn't expect that level of personal growth, and I didn't expect the relationships that we've built along the way, and I didn't expect the travel. There's just so many opportunities. And I really, in Jamie's defense, I have not improved on my actual podcast ability in 6 years. Like, I suck. And we just got a review from someone for Orange is the New Black, and I've never laughed so hard in my entire life because she was like, you guys are the worst. Like, I hate you. She was like, I hate you. And she goes, but I can't stop listening, and you crack me up. And she was like, you guys just tell each other misinformation back and forth. And I'm like, yeah, I know. She was like, you remind me of my neighbors who are swingers. And I was like, what is happening? It was the funniest thing I've ever read in my life. So I was like, okay, never mind. I like reviews now.
And Rob, what's your best advice for somebody who's like listening to a lot of podcasts and thinking podcasts are really amazing? I wish I could do that.
You know what? I talk about this a lot because people come to me a lot about it. And the reality is everybody has a great voice. Everybody has interesting ideas. If they say they're thinking about doing this, they listen to podcasts, they want to do it, do it. Do it. Do it with what you have. Let it come to you where you're at. So if you're somebody who's like, well, I don't have equipment, I'm afraid of, then do it on your phone, you know? Or find somebody that has the equipment. A lot of libraries now have like podcast setups. You could go and do it for free in a library. Find a subject and talk. Even if you're like, I have no idea what I want to do, but I know I can talk, do it. Because it's a wonderful thing. It's a way to communicate your ideas like none other. And there are a lot of ways you can say, like, well, I could make vlogs, I could do this, I could do that. Yeah, vlogs, I gotta brush my hair, I gotta bathe. With podcasting, I don't have to do any of that, except when we do live events. I promise you guys I've bathed. So the bottom line is, just go for it. Walk off the cliff. It's really not as scary as you think. It's just like the people doing it live today. There were people, believe it or not, that were terrified to do this today. And they told me they were terrified. Yeah. Was there a reason for them to be terrified? No. All they got was love back.
Yeah.
And they feel good about it now that they've done it. Do it. Do it. There's no reason not to. And if you think the world is going to come back and say you suck, guess what? They suck. So, totally. No biggie.
Does anyone else have anything that they want to add on to what Rob said? Any advice or words of wisdom maybe for somebody who's like, yes, I'm going to do it, and then now what?
I would say if you're thinking about doing a podcast, just like Rob said, You should do a podcast. You should absolutely give it a shot. Talk as much as you want, and then listen to it back and think, is this something that I would listen to?
That's where we went wrong.
Yeah.
What
So
Martha just said off mic is that's where we went wrong.
I don't know if she's actually listened to any of our podcasts out of 6 years and thousands of hours.
But no, so that's the trick, though, is that everybody's got a thing that they love so much and they just want to talk about. And if your friends are rolling their eyes when you talk about this, that's a good indication you should talk about it alone into a podcast.
Which is how I built an entire network, because Martha was tired of hearing about it.
Because someone online wants to hear your opinion about that one episode of Doctor Who that has been bugging you for years.
Ooh, we need to talk afterwards.
There you go.
This sort of piggybacks off of part of what Ansel and Rob were saying, because we always do our podcast live. Something that I always keep in mind when we read a joke that it's like, we all laughed our asses off in the rehearsals for this, or I was giggling myself silly as I typed it. I like my joke. Sometimes you tell a joke and it doesn't land, or sometimes you want to see someone in the audience do that knowing like, oh, I see what you did there, but you don't get that. Something that I always keep in mind is the people I'm looking at aren't my entire audience.
Right.
Many of my entire audience I'll never look into the eyes of.
Yeah.
And someone is out there going, oh my God, I love that reference. Yeah. So this is for you, Jeffrey, I call him.
Literal thousands of people.
Jeffrey always gets me.
And there's always somebody who, even if you think that what you have to say or your voice, you're like, oh, I insignificant, whatever I have to say. You never know what that one thing you might say on that one podcast episode could change someone's life completely.
Totally.
You know, or bring them to network with someone. So you have to use your voice. It's the only thing that we have, you know, really. And so you use it. And so if that's what you want to do, you need to do it.
Yes, and on that, a lot of times people will get the, oh, but that already exists. And it's like, but not in your voice, and not with your thoughts, and not with your experiences. And so, yes, do it even if there are 10 other shows that are similar to what you want to do, because they're not yours.
One thing that I would say to everybody is there are no rules. Anyone telling you the rules is making up the rules.
Even if they have a title like Podcast Boss, like
podcast, right? Especially podcast. But no, I'm kidding.
You can be the boss of your podcast.
You're right. But
wife.
on your show, you give great advice. But you know what? You can break the rules. There are actually no rules. There are guidelines. There are things that can help you make it happen. That's what you do. That's what I do. But the reality is, don't get bogged down in that. If you want to make a 1-minute podcast about frog reproduction and that's your thing, you know what? Somebody's going to subscribe. Probably me.
But it probably already exists.
Yeah, in fact, I just subscribed to it on Stitcher. But seriously, don't let yourself get stopped at any point.
Molly, you've been podcasting longer than many of us on this stage, actually. Do you have any advice for a new podcaster?
I honestly just think go ahead and try to make it coherent, and it does not matter like what type of equipment you're using or whatever. Don't get into the nitty-gritty as long as you've got a good show. Like, as long as there's a good premise to it, people will listen. And don't care about that, whether or not they listen, because you like it.
And on that note, this has been Podcast Envy. I'm Andrea Klunder, your podcast boss. This has been my crew of podcast bosses. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Podcast Envy is produced by your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. That's me. The Podcast Envy theme music is by Valentin Sosnitsky, courtesy of the Free Sound Project at freesound.org, and our podcast Angel music is by Benjamin Mastropolito, also on freesound.org as Lemon Cream. All music is licensed under the Creative Commons. Our episodes are mixed by Edwin Ruiz, and hey, if you want your show to sound as good as ours, hire us. Put the magic audio mojo of the Creative Imposter Studios to work for you. Thanks so much for listening, and here's to making your podcast the envy of everyone else.